we have this great opportunity while we're alive to have this run at vitality so that we can have health span versus a lifespan. Because health span is how many years you're on the planet healthy before you have chronic disease.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fun one. Our returning guest is a nutritionist, TV host, and best-selling author, Julie Daniluk. Welcome back to the show.
Michael, it's so wonderful to be back. I've been researching new cool things and I can't wait to share it.
Oh, well, it's great to have you. And before the show, I was looking at our notes and looking 2019, such a lot has changed in the world. And so what I'd love for you to do before we get fully started is just share a little bit about you and your career journey leading up to this point. And then and then we'll talk about, how the world has changed.
Sure. So I have my first degree in theater and my second degree in nutrition. And I ended up having a tremendous trip around the world. When I was 30, I decided, I'm going to go around the world. And I nearly died of food poisoning. I ran 105-degree fever. I was hospitalized and temporarily paralyzed because the food poisoning was so bad I couldn't move my limbs. And I came home with post-infectious colitis, and that led to having arthritis and bursitis. So I ended up so sick that I had to heal myself. So hence the nutrition knowledge. I ended up learning everything I possibly could about how to heal my body with food and had a tremendous breakthrough. Now I'm in remission of all three of those very serious inflammatory conditions. And was so lucky with my theater background and my nutrition training I got my TV show, and then that led to writing books. And now I teach full time. So that was the crazy thing is, of course, we've changed a lot in the last few years. And I'm so happy that I can just focus now 100% on teaching people anti-inflammatory nutrition, which means that I help people get out of pain. I help people live their best life. Help them thrive. That's my absolute focus.
Wow. Well, love what you do, and what a remarkable story. And I'm sure many will listen to this. I hope will listen to this in terms of either if they've got ailments, how maybe some pathways to become healthy, but as well, if you've got your health today, how to avoid going into a situation where you don't have your health. And we're reminded all too often that you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. It's the one thing that money cannot buy at the end of the day is how our body and our health is. And so this
just
is
imagine Steve Jobs.
Yes.
He died with billions in the bank.
Billions in the bank.
Couldn't change his fate. I mean, I really think that he was a self-confessed fruitarian, and I do think he was nutrient deficient because of his wild choices, and also was very sick. He went abroad and studied extensively abroad, and I know that really translated into a lot of inflammation. So I just like to use him as an example because he would do anything. He would trade any amount of money for his health back.
Absolutely.
And we have this great opportunity while we're alive to have this run at vitality so that we can have health span versus a lifespan. Because health span is how many years you're on the planet healthy before you have chronic disease. And really, we want to avoid those last few years where we're not able to be independent. So I'm always helping people really activate those longevity genes.
I love that. And such an interesting way of putting it. Don't think I've heard that. So what did you say? It was longevity?
So that there's a health
lifespan, health span, and lifespan. Yeah. Yes, I love it. And if we have two of those working, we're in great shape. Long life and a great health span, where the life we do have is pain-free and healthy and whatnot. And so all too often we hear the stories, right? People are in pain, get out of bed, lie in bed, pain. If we can avoid that, why wouldn't we want to do our best to do that? So I love that frame. And so, Julie, you were on in 2019. The world has changed a lot since then. Let us know what that journey's been like between now and 2019.
It was incredibly confronting because I made 100% of my income public speaking. So I did 52 tour stops from one end of the country to the other in 2019. And then in 2020, it just radio silence. We weren't allowed to do public speaking. So I was so fortunate that I sat down with my team because I didn't want to lay anyone off because they're all my family. And I said, okay, guys, we got to figure this out. And we came up with an anti-inflammatory support group. And so we started meeting on Wednesday nights and bringing people in because, of course, at the height of the pandemic, people had all the time in the world. They couldn't go to the movies. They couldn't go have any hobbies. So we started to collect these beautiful people who were really striving for the longest health span. And we started to meet every Wednesday night. And now we continued with that. So now we're 225 people strong. And it's a huge focus of mine is we run this group called Thrive Hive. And every month we teach these longevity practices. And it's just been the best thing ever because now I realize I'm 100% independent. I used to be reliant on getting gigs and getting on planes. And now I can teach from my computer, which is very handy. Now, I do love public speaking, but this is really fun too.
Yes, well, it's nice to have choice, right? And anything in life is choice. Choice is definitely some freedom there, and if you can do both, you get to have the best of both. And so, great to see you made the most of it, and it's altered your life and the way you do business in a positive way.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'd love to share some of the things that we're up to in Thrive Hive because I believe it's really changing lives. We have so many great testimonials.
And we'll make sure we have some time to actually talk about that. Okay. And whenever you can share that as well, how people can get access to that, because It does sound very, very valuable for our listener. But I wanted to ask, and this just ties into that, but the pandemic was a stressful time. A lot of uncertainty. Humans crave certainty, and we didn't have a lot of certainty going on for a long time, right? It's like 2019 started whispers to early 2020, and then it just seemed to go on and on and on and on around the uncertainty. And now we know that, and I know, some people choose the wrong foods going through stress. From your perspective, what foods are healthy drinks that are good for reducing stress and anxiety? Because I know our listeners do have a lot of stress and anxiety, likely with the work that they do. But what did you see during the pandemic, and then how do we make better choices?
Well, I was blown away at the statistics. 23% increase in junk food consumption. I think it was a 9% increase in alcohol consumption.
Yes, and that sounds low. I would have guessed higher than 9% for alcohol consumption.
I guess across the board, 9%.
Yeah, but 23% increase in junk food.
In junk food, and 31% decrease in physical movement. Because a lot of us, let's remember the height of the pandemic, we were locked in our houses and told not to go out unless you had to walk a dog. You know,
Right. And I'm going
it
to
was
put my
bad.
stand-up, when you mentioned that, I'm putting up my stand-up desk here because I went, we can do a little coaching for me in my own health, but we'll get into that again. But so movement, 30, you said 31%?
31% decrease in movement.
In movement, yes. So more people sitting, watching TV, or now, we say it's great. We're now working from home, but working from home means we're likely at the computer and at the desk, which I've experienced.
Definitely. So there's so many delicious things we can put in. I really want to talk about stress reduction foods because people don't realize that they always think like I eat as a reflex to being stressed, but you can reverse engineer it and like choose foods that shut down your stress response, which is really cool. So starting with blueberries at breakfast, blueberries have been proven to reduce cortisol, our stress hormone. So we definitely want to gobble down those. In the evening, I like to have a couple cherries. So I buy frozen cherries and thaw out like a small bowl of them because they actually contain natural amounts of melatonin, which helps you sleep better, which is so critical, right?
Yes.
And then another thing that's really handy is you take an apple, you slice it up, and you dip it in hemp hearts. Hemp hearts are rich in really good oils. Of course, the best ones are from Manitoba, which is so cool that it's a great Canadian thing. But I just love dipping the apple strips in the hemp hearts because it's also really high in magnesium. And magnesium is something we desperately need for stress reduction. It does 400 jobs in the body, including hormonal balance, including proper sleep.
Magnesium.
So definitely enjoy that.
So hemp hearts has lots of magnesium in it. You dip the apple, like the apple wedges.
Apple slice, and you dip it in a bunch of hemp hearts and then chew it. If you can't find hemp hearts, sesame seeds are also a great rich source of calcium, which also helps you sleep. So just having that seed will slow down the sugars in the fruit because you want to always pair sugars with fiber so that they slow down. And you create a time release capsule for the carbohydrate, which is great. Okay. And then the next thing I would talk about is eating more fermented foods because sauerkraut, I know I'm Ukrainian, but everyone's focusing more on pickles and olives and sauerkraut because those fermented foods help to set up the good bacteria in the gut. Because what's wild is during the pandemic, being scared. So every night we would sit down and we would watch television and get scared out of our nuts about how painful and worried we were all. We're all feeling bad. And what that did was kill a lot of the good bacteria. So when you're scared, that old expression, I was so scared I shit myself. Well, that's because we're killing off the good bacteria and our bowel mobility goes. So you either get constipated or have loose stools. So it's really important for us to double down on these probiotics because when we put those guys back in our guts, we can really help calm ourselves down and also help to prevent a lot of digestive woes, which were in the background of anxiety. So I highly recommend that. And then I really like increasing our omega-3 oil. And omega-3 oil, let's remember the best source in the world is seafood. Nothing beats seafood. But if you don't like seafood or you're allergic to it, then you can also have algae oil. You can have omega-3 rich eggs. You can have grass-fed, grass-finished beef is also high in omega-3. But omega-3 helps us make more serotonin. So so we make more serotonin with omega-3, but we also want to make sure to have lots of vitamin D. And vitamin D is found, one of the greatest sources is just eating sardines. That's an incredible source. But if you're like, ooh, no, I don't want fish, know that you can even get vitamin D, a vegan source, from mushrooms. Mushrooms are delicious. And the darker the mushroom, the higher the vitamin D, because did you know that mushrooms grown in the dark that are white, have almost no vitamin D? Because just like human beings, mushrooms make vitamin D in sunlight. So we're just eating their captured sunlight. When we eat like a portobello mushroom or a cremini mushroom, so go for the darker varieties. The healthiest varieties are definitely the medicinal mushrooms. So you may have heard of shiitake mushrooms, maitake. There's so many good ones. Lion's manes, like they're really getting exotic. But just really increase your mushrooms to bust your stress because they're also just providing so many good minerals that they'll also help you stay calm.
Love that. Love those great tips. You said LG oil. Yeah.
Algae oil, as in the algae.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Algae
Algae
oil is the vegan version of the
Yes.
omega-3.
Okay.
They extract it from algae because that's where the fish get their omega-3 from, is eating algae. So now they just go down to the algae and they can grow it in tanks, so that has no pollutants.
Okay.
So that's really handy that we're seeing some vegan oils that are super high in DHEA and EPA, which is the active ingredients that are anti-inflammatory, without the toxins. Because the problem is we don't want to eat swordfish or mahi-mahi or any of these huge fish that we used to really love, because we now realize they're filled with mercury, which is definitely going to make you anxious.
Yes, and a whole bunch of other things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Those are the foods that you've mentioned going to help us with our stress, help us with our anxiety. Most of it was like morning foods. What about snacks? Like during the day, like, people are watching TV, or, lunchtime comes around, or they're feeling like the afternoon need a bedtime snack maybe. What's good for us to eat then?
I have dozens of snacks. Would you like me to just rhyme some off?
I think it's yes. Let's talk about some snacks, because I'd say that's an easy one. People are doing things. They need to, take a break from the desk or work. And what are they going to choose? Like my mom has been, since COVID, that's been positive for us. My mom's been living with us at like 3-4 months at a time. In COVID, it was like almost a full year. And then she took a break, went home and to her place. But what's great about it is she's an amazing cook. What's bad about it is she's an amazing cook. So she's cooking, she's baking cookies, and she's very health conscious, but as she's also very taste conscious too. So she makes sometimes it's not the best for my waistline.
Yeah. Well, let me give you some snacks when you're not with her then.
Yes, please do.
Or maybe
when she's home, she'll love this podcast episode, because she's a food lover and definitely loves these tips as well.
Well, this is going out to Michael's mom then.
Perfect.
So 4 ounces of applesauce with lots of cinnamon or ginger sprinkled on it is only 49 calories. Some actual cherries, the cherries I was talking about, you could have 12 cherries for 48 little calories. You can have gelatin. I really recommend people eat more Jell-O, but make sure it's sugar-free, because gelatin is pure protein. We have to remember it's got 11 grams of protein per tablespoon. Wow. Which is absolutely remarkable. So definitely, I like to put a little bit of coconut whipping cream on top of that. It's only 40 little calories. Having some strawberries, like I have a cup of strawberries with just a tablespoon of coconut yogurt, is 47 little calories. If you're a salty person, I really like 8-ounce bone broth, like salted bone broth, incredibly good for you, only 36 calories. I like slicing up a cucumber and then putting it in with a really nice nut cheese. That's something like or taking some smoked salmon and putting it on top of some cucumber. That's extremely low cal. Let's remember just tomato juice is great. Vegetable juice like that is only 39 calories a cup. Dill pickle, 10 calories. 5 olives, 23 calories. I absolutely love snap peas. Sugar snap peas are so delicious. They're full of fiber. They're low carb, only 40 calories for a cup and a half. So they're the perfect movie snack, and they're crunchy. So if you're craving something crunchy, that's absolutely perfect. I already talked about my apple with hemp hearts, but have you considered also just how much people love avocado? Mash some avocado, put a little lime juice or lemon juice, and then have it with some grain-free crackers, because there's new crackers on the market that don't have virtually any carbs in them because they're just seeds. So you're looking for pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, flax seeds, and they're absolutely delicious. There's many different brands, and they're all sporting, like you can have a serving under 100 calories, which is great. Then we got to power up on protein. I love turkey roll-ups, where you just take your lettuce leaf, slap some turkey in there, little squeeze of mustard, roll it up, and now you've got a snack that's only 46 calories, but it's going to leave you satiated because of all that good protein. Another one that people really might want to consider is 20 grams of dark chocolate, because dark chocolate just fulfills our need to feel loved. So it pops our oxytocin. It literally is love food. It's high in this really cool phytochemical called phenylethylamine. Phenylethylamine, P for short. And it triggers these endorphins in the brain that makes you feel so pleasurable. It's so pleasurable that you move towards it and feel so happy. So don't deprive yourself chocolate. Just look for brands that have taken the sugar out of chocolate. I've noticed even huge big box stores are providing keto chocolate. It says right on the bag, keto chocolate. And that means they've taken a lot of the sugar out, and it's mostly good fat that's satiating.
These are great suggestions. And I want to say it would be fantastic to have a list on the wall, on the refrigerator. It's like, that's probably one of my biggest challenges is when maybe it's a male thing, but I go to the refrigerator and I look in there and it's like, what am I going to have? So many options, so many things to choose from. I really like the idea of all of your suggestions. It's easy. It's like, what do I feel like? The apples with some hemp parts, or maybe I'm going to put, grab a lettuce wrap and put some turkey into it. These are great suggestions. I absolutely love the ideas. And it has me thinking as well around just the impact that these things, you've mentioned it a little bit, but, does the amount we eat, how does that impact us? Because you talked a lot about the different calories. I know a lot of people are calorie counters, and, we want to stay slim or do our best to stay slim. But let's talk a little bit about portion sizes and how do we decide should we eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and why?
Well, it's really a good idea to start volumizing the foods that are low calorie, because when we fill up on those, we get tremendous nutrition. So the irony is that fruits and vegetables typically have ridiculous amounts of vitamins and minerals, but very low calories. But yet, why didn't we have the same desire for them built in? Don't you find it strange that we move towards deep fried foods, things that are heavily salted, things that we know are going to make us feel like nauseous afterwards, or feeling like we aren't going to eat for a week, like those kind of sensations. It's so weird that those foods are quite addictive, and it's because they never existed in nature. So we evolved over 200,000 years, if you believe in evolution. 200,000 years we've been around, and we've only had access to white refined sugar and white refined flour and high heat deep frying in seed oils with heavy salt for the last 90 to 100 years.
Wow.
That's why we shouldn't be held responsible. It's not our fault that we crave these foods, because they're built-in addiction. There's a built-in addiction to them because they hit the bliss point. So there's a whole book written on the bliss point, which is basically when you take fat, carbohydrate, and salt, and you put them together in the perfect measure, you end up with an insanely addictive food. And so what I really want to help people with is to get those. That's why I kind of went through different flavors, because you can't fight a potato chip craving with celery. It doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't work. You need to have something that deeply satisfies you. And when we get into portion sizes, I just want to preface everything. If we fill up on good fats, fiber, and protein, I promise you, your need for carbohydrate will naturally drop because you're so full, you're so satiated. But if I was to look at protein first, because I want everyone to start thinking, there has been an unfortunate miscalculation in the nutrition industry where they used to say you need 0.8 grams of protein for every kilo of body weight. So for example, if you were, say, 100 kilos, that means you only need 80 grams of protein. And that is grossly misunderstood. Now we understand, oh my goodness, oops, sorry, over 50 years old, you have something called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is muscle loss, and that's exactly like bone loss in osteopenia or osteoporosis. We have to fight this. So the only way to fight it is to dramatically increase your protein and lift weight and exercise. It's the only way around sarcopenia. So that's why I've got a lot of ladies on between 0.8 grams per pound and 0.1 gram per pound, depending on their needs. And it just revolutionizes their life. So that's why we really want to focus on lots of protein, but make sure that each portion is the palm of your hand. So there's a really neat system for that. You just use the palm of your hand, and that's what your body can handle at a sitting. And you'll also notice protein is self-limiting, meaning you lose the taste for it over time. So unless you're like an 18-year-old guy who's just run a marathon, typically when you sit down, you'll taste the hamburger or the steak or whatever you're eating. You'll see it change flavor in your mouth. And when you no longer find it like delicious and like, wow, that's when you can put the rest away for your next serving. But you need to really up protein and be eating that a minimum of 3 times a day, the palm of your hand. So critically important. Then next up, we want to talk about upping your fats, because we also dramatically underestimated how many good fats you should be eating. So instead of just having the standard like 3 servings of good fat, we're now like, well, what happens if we increase that to 5 servings or more? And that's the nib of your thumb. So why I like that is because when we have olive oil, a tablespoon of olive oil, you wouldn't believe how satiating it is, how much it balances your blood sugar, how much your body can run on good fat that's anti-inflammatory, putting the fire out on your joints, instead of us focusing on the same amount of carbohydrate. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, as I've gone over 50, I'm now 52, I really have decreased the amount of carbs. You know, the old days, it was eat 6 to 10 servings of carbohydrates per day. That's what the old food pyramid recommended. And I'm just wondering, could that really be the culprit as to why 60% of Canadians are feeling like they need to lose some weight? Right? So we don't have to beat ourselves up. There was a lot of wild advice going around. But now that we really understand longevity, we want to up the good fats, the nib of your thumb, so a tablespoon. So that's good olive oil. Eating nuts and seeds, so a lot more pumpkin seeds, a lot more macadamia nuts. Big box stores are now even just supplying gorgeous, delicious macadamia nuts. I consider them butterballs because they're the sweetest, most delicious nut in the whole world.
Yes.
Love them. But what I really recommend is bag them up, because quite frankly, they will become as addictive as potato chips because they're salty and wonderful and buttery. So I just take and count them out. I do 10 in a bag, and that's my snack. And pre-serving yourself is an amazing way to really, you could have as little as 5, but I find 10 is extremely satiating.
Yeah. And that's I would say just, we've had the macadamians here, and I'd say like they run a good competition with a little bit of potato chips pretty easily. Delicious things, and way better for you.
Yeah, way better for you. Absolutely. And then let's just get to those fruits and veggies. 7 to 10 veggies, 2 to 3 fruits is going to totally smash down your appetite. So if we can lean into those and like be really prepared on a Sunday. So you take a whole celery and you just chop it into pieces, put it in water so it doesn't curl up, it doesn't get dry. And that's how you're going to get those veggies into you. If you have a cucumber and you start eating it, instead of eating it sliced and, it's going to go mushy. No, just take it to work as a cucumber and slice it into huge chunks, and then just have some sprinkle of salt. Just eat the whole thing. You'd be amazed at how full you are, how few calories there are. So that's how I really try to help people, is there's this concept called volumetrics, which is get the volume of your low calorie, incredibly healthy foods up, and it just knocks your appetite back and hardwires you to crave the right things, because every single veggie has its own benefit. In vitamin A foods are typically orange, vitamin B foods are typically green, and vitamin C foods are often yellow or red. So a lot of berries, of course, are high in vitamin C. So it's really easy when you eat the rainbow, eat this volume of produce, you're going to feel so different.
It's amazing, amazing stuff. I love some of those tips, and I'm gonna bring macadamia nuts back on deck, because those are good snacks. And when we do these things, let's talk a little bit about, we started off and you told your story of health woes, getting food poisoning, and how it impacted you. We've talked about the impact on osteoporosis, the bone loss, as well as muscle loss. What else? What else are the benefits of us thinking about this? And you also mentioned as well that we do have quite a battle in front of us, because people are designing foods to make us want to consume them at high amounts. It's like anything. If you're in business and your business is selling potato chips, you're not trying to make them less tasty. You're always trying to make them more tasty, but they're not necessarily good for you. So we've got a big battle there. But what's the costs of us not winning this battle?
Well, I just want to get into the one area we haven't talked about yet, which is memory loss. Like, it really is, I think the greatest fear for people besides getting cancer is losing their mind. And my husband inherited the ApoE4 gene from his grandmother, which is the Alzheimer's gene. And if you pull that short card or that short straw, you really have to double down on nutrition, like anti-inflammatory nutrition, because we now realize that memory loss is in large part to do with brain inflammation. And it's our inability to take the garbage from the brain to the curb. And we do that by actually helping our body reduce these beta plaques that accumulate in the brain. And that is very much from high omega-3, high produce, good amounts of vitamin D. All the things I've talked about for anti-inflammatory nutrition also are really good for the brain. But we also have to focus on sleep. We have to get to sleep, because in the middle of the night, the actual theta waves allow the brain to empty the garbage. It turns out there's this whole wiring in the brain they just discovered called the glymphatic system. It's never really been talked about until a few years ago. They just discovered it. It was lymph rivers that are so small that they could only see them under very high-powered microscopes, but they pulse and pull the toxins off the brain and flush the garbage, the beta plaque, out of the body. And we have to get into that deep sleep. So that's why when we eat deep fried foods, when we eat inflammatory foods, when we focus on high sugar before bed, like ice cream, so many people will sit and enjoy a big bowl of ice cream watching a movie. Unfortunately, we don't go into deep sleep, because our livers are so active trying to deal with the food we just ate that we end up having, if you were to wear a sleep monitor like I do, you end up seeing these crazy wake-ups all through the night. Where when I practice time-restricted eating, where I kind of cut off and don't eat junky food at night, you have a much better chance at sleeping like a teenager, or like, I shouldn't use them as an example because they go to bed past midnight typically, but sleep like a baby. You have a chance to actually get into deep areas of sleep and clean out that brain, which I know everyone needs.
Absolutely. Well, that in itself is worth all of it, is to get good sleep. If you can't sleep well, you've got pain in your body, not a very enjoyable existence, that is for sure. So these are some great tips. I've enjoyed it. I've got a lot of ideas myself, for me personally. For our listener, tell us a little bit about where they can learn more about you, You've mentioned some of the programs that you have, but resources where they can take this on a deeper level with you and take on their own health and nutrition.
So they can certainly work with our team personally. We have like deep programs. We have cleanses where we teach nutrition classes each week, but then we also have our support group, which is such a beautiful place to jump in. So I highly recommend people check out Thrive Hive because it's just such an amazing group, because we have a private online community that's not on Facebook. It's on the back end of my website. So it's super private. You can share deeply. And people just love the live teaching every Wednesday night because we get into such incredible topics. And we also have a yoga instructor built in. We have a fitness trainer built in. And we also have an herbalist and a life coach built in. So we have 5 experts that address the anti-inflammatory lifestyle from all 5 pillars of longevity. Because we really looked and thought, what do the longest living human beings do? Well, they all seem to have these kind of basic things like anti-inflammatory nutrition, and they often have purpose, and they often have a spiritual practice or a stillness practice, and they all move. So we need to help people on all these fronts. So we thought, this is it. This is how we're going to help people live to 100 and beyond in a vibrant way.
That's exciting. I absolutely love it. Sounds like a great opportunity for our listener. And if you could give the .com for those that are listening,
sure.
We'll make sure that's there.
JulieDaniluk.com will take you there, and you can see all the different things, all the different options there. So just my name.com, JulieDaniluk.com. And also find me on social. Love to have a chat with you. I'm on all the big platforms, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. I'm even on TikTok now. So I'd love to come play with you.
Love it. So we'll have those links, of course, available in the show notes for our listener. And Julie, this has been absolutely a pure joy for me to listen, to have you back, hear your story, and all these great tips for us to improve what's going into our body and increase our health span. Which I love that little tidbit that I'd never heard before. So this has been great, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Michael. See you next time.
See you next time. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.